everyone, and welcome to the Aussie Game Podcast, where we talk all things Australian football. I tend to keep coming into these weeks thinking there's going to be 1 week where there's not much to talk about, but there's plenty to talk about, as always, isn't there, Mopper?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Welcome, everybody, our friends in Australia and our international friends in the football community. I just wanted to have a quick shout out to the Jota brothers to obviously send our thoughts, love, and support to the family, and obviously for the 3 young children. Our thought, and obviously tragic news this week, and as a whole, the whole football community is affected, and we just want to send our love back over, obviously, and send our thoughts to the Jota family.
Yeah, well said, Mopper. I certainly echo those sentiments. It was devastating news when it came through late last week. And yeah, thoughts and prayers with everyone affected over there. We are here to talk all things Australian football. It's hard to move on to something that doesn't matter so much when we hear about that news. But we are here to talk about that because Stan Sport took over the Premier League broadcast rights this week, taking over from Optus Sport. The agreement also includes the rights to FA Cup games, Japan's J League, and the US National Women's Soccer League. So it's yet to be determined whether any football content will be broadcast on Nine's free-to-air channels at this stage, which would obviously be a huge advantage for Australian football fans. But firstly, Mopper, what did you make of the deal?
Well, Optus Sports had some good content. I really enjoyed watching Optus Sports. Geez, there's so many perspectives on this because obviously in Australia, football is spread out through all these broadcasters, and obviously Optus had the Premier League. I was surprised though by the number. I couldn't believe that when I seen the number that Optus only had 700,000 subscribers for the Premier League. But when I looked a bit deeper, you can start to understand why. Stan Sport, obviously, they already have Europa and Champions League. You go across to then Paramount, who has the Matildas and Socceroos and obviously the A-League. And then obviously if you want to watch the World Club Challenge that's happening at the moment, it's on KO. So it's just totally not cost effective for any Australian to really follow obviously the game, and it's really difficult and very not cost effective. So look, I can understand obviously the bigger picture of Optus wanting to let loose and obviously, move it over for cost purposes. They did put a lot of content into it, so I'd be interested to see what Stan does with that material, especially with the cost basis of the deal. Look, it takes one channel out, which is a saving for Australians if they've got both at the moment. So that's a saving for those people. But still, you've got Paramount and KO with separate events. But I think now it's starting to merge. We've seen overseas some models with One Football in Canada. That's one of my favourites where everything's on one channel. But I think that's a pipe dream for me because the Australian broadcasting market it's all about money, isn't it? And
A football channel for Australian football fans, mate.
oh, mate, bring it on.
How good would it be?
Oh, I'd love it. Just please, one day, all right, before I pass, please, if we can make that happen, please let us know your feelings on that one because I'll tell you what, wouldn't that be a game changer? And obviously, going back to your question, I think look. I know you've got to start with Stan with a package, and then you got to buy the sport. I just want the sports channel, man. Stop making it so complicated. But it's just the way it goes. So look, I'm sure we'll enjoy it because the Premier League is what it is. So yeah, we'll leave it with that. I'm more interested in what your thoughts are, and then we'll pipe dream about the One Football channel later on after the podcast.
So you're saying you don't enjoy the quality programming on Stan that's already there?
Oh, yeah, look, it's got Champions League and Europa.
No, I'm talking about the non-sport stuff, mate.
Oh,
Not interested in that.
Oh, look, I don't follow any really else other than sport, but that's just me. There might be more Australians out there that obviously watch. I don't even know what shows it's got. Has it got anything interesting? What could be more interesting than the Premier League and Champions League and Europa League and football?
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe I'm a bit boring, but yeah. You might have to share a show with me or something. I don't know.
I've got no idea.
No.
So let's have a look back at the history of Optus Sport. So because they were probably one of the first ones that kind of came into this streaming market. In 2016, they started with the Premier League rights. They had some massive issues in the 2018 World Cup. I don't think they anticipated the excitement and the buzz around the World Cup. So they definitely had some streaming issues around the 2018 World Cup. I think to their credit, they saw the possibilities for the 2023 Women's World Cup. I agree with you in terms of the product they offered as well, though, because it wasn't just the Premier League. They obviously had the matches live, they did the highlights, they did the goals, they did mini matches, etc. But it was the shows, the interviews, the articles, and the features that I really enjoyed having on Optus Sport, and I really hope that Stan brings some of that across at least, because I think that will be a big gap. If they don't produce it, I think that's a big miss in terms of Australian football fans. I mean, Optus obviously picked up the feed from the Premier League and obviously broadcast a lot of their shows as well. But I think having that local angle is really good as well, because the number of times that Ange got featured last year when he had a one-on-one with Mark Schwarzer, or I just think there's opportunities there that we don't want to miss out on. So I actually put it out to a few people during the week, to try and get their thoughts on social media, and it kind of came down to a couple of different buckets for me. So the people who already had Stan Sport and not Optus, that's a saving for them. So they're saving money, not having to have the double subscriptions for that. The people who had Optus and not Stan, and potentially just wanted the Premier League or the other leagues that they were showing, they're going to be forking out a bit more. So probably not great for them. If people had both, they're saving money, which is great for them. And if you had neither, it probably gives you the option. So if you were kind of interested in the Premier League, kind of interested in the Champions League, it might actually give you an option, as you said, with at least two of the products that people are interested being on the one subscription. So I thought that was interesting feedback for some people during the week.
Yes, we'll no doubt be listening to Mike Bosnich a lot more.
Well, that's it. That's an interesting point as well you make, because obviously the Champions League and the Europa League hosts were Mike Bosnich, Adam Peacock, and Craig Foster. So it will be interesting from the Premier League angle whether they bring those guys out, whether they employ some Australian talent. Another good thing that Optus did was they started bringing in, your likes of Mark Schwarzer or Scott McDonald. Tommy Orr was on there at a point there. They kind of brought these former players back who had some experience and they could provide some insight, mainly from an Australian point of view. So as I said, they will have the option to just pull the whole feed from the Premier League and just show their shows, or whether they go down a different angle and do some hosting. So what do you want to see from that, mate? And what do you think is going to be best for Australian football fans?
I think with Optus, like they had their current setup with, with all the stars over there. So I think we'll probably see more of that. I think you'll probably see the boys just jump on to an extra show, if that'll add any value. But most of the cross feeds were used the international over there in UK. Michael Owen, Tim Sherwood, all those boys over there. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it was well covered by over there anyway in the broadcast. So I think we'll just be feeding it in. And I think, yeah, hopefully we'll get a little bit of data and some feedback, because we love hearing from the boys too from Australia. So got some good opinions, and, it'd be good to see them obviously showcase any Australians and anything in there as well that pops through in the Premier League this year.
I think, like, Optus Sport, credit to them, they did employ a whole heap of Australians as well in terms of what they broadcast. So I think that would be a big gap if they didn't have these things. And I might be in the minority. Maybe people couldn't care less. They just want to see live games, or the goal highlights in the morning, or some mini matches or something like that. But I certainly like to get into a bit more of behind the scenes and hear those interviews and those features that they did. I really enjoyed that.
Right. Well, I think, look, I think it'll have mixed reviews. So we'll see what unfolds. It's going to stand. So yeah, they haven't got much time to really get organised either. But that's how quick football turns. And it'll be interesting to watch this space. And shout us out a few comments what your feedback is, because we'd love to hear the Australian people really see your response in regards to how it impacts you as an individual.
Yeah, look, I think like in terms of the short turnaround, I think as an absolute minimum for this first season, and they are going to want to hit the ground running. They going to want to bring in new subscribers to their platform, and as well as retaining others who might kind of dip in and out. Say in Super Rugby, for example, I'm not sure of the exact timings of that competition, but they might run it to the end of the rugby season and then drop off Stan and then come back in. They might be able to hold some of those subscribers for the 12-month cycle as opposed to just having them dip in and out. So they are going to want to have a good product from the get-go to make sure that they can do that. So I think absolute bare minimum is obviously a good stream on the broadcast, and then being able to provide those goal packages and the mini matches and the highlights when people wake up following the Premier League round.
Yeah, 100%, mate, 100%. Oh, we'll see what unfolds in the future.
As you said, not that long until the Premier League season starts. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether people jump over from Optus Sport and decide what people are doing. I've certainly seen a few people say that they're definitely not going to jump over, but we'll wait and see in the fullness of time if they do jump over by the time the Premier League starts. All right, we're going to move on to our next topic, which is the Socceroos. They have announced a game during the week, so they'll be taking on Canada in the October FIFA international window on the Saturday, the 11th of October, Australian time. We do anticipate that there'll be another opponent in that part of the world for the other game in that window, but that one has yet to be publicised. So we'll wait and see on that one. But just on Canada, they're currently ranked 30th in the world, which is their highest ever ranking. They're a pretty decent team. They finished first in CONCACAF qualifying for the 2022 World Cup. They lost all three games at the World Cup. And I thought, when I looked at that at first, I thought, oh, that's pretty disappointing. And then I looked at their opponents. So in their group, they had an aging Belgium golden generation. They played Croatia, who ended up finishing third, and they played Morocco, who ended up finishing fourth. So tough group that they were in, and I think they're a good opponent for Australia to face. And obviously, with the World Cup being in North America, for the Aussies to get a bit used to those conditions.
Yeah, spot on, mate. I totally agree. And if you look at Canada's rise, a few years ago they were 72, then 56, and then they're right up to 30, and they're really moving forward, not only domestically, but obviously providing and producing talent. You're starting to see a lot of players pop up that are Canadian, and even a few Americans, obviously, in the bigger leagues now. So there's a real challenge for the Socceroos, and I think hit the nail on the head with going over there to experience. We possibly could be in that zone, in that World Cup zone up there, and 7 to 8 hours from Europe, UK. So I think perfect. And then coming back, as much as what we'd love to see the Socceroos back on home soil, the travel's too much. I think 7 to 8 hours is perfect, even though it's still a little bit of a stretch. I think the obviously thought process and thinking is this is where we're going to play next year, possibly. This could be a possible opponent in that zone, in that North American zone. So I think it's what a great fixture that we're going to have. I think it's fantastic. I think, and right in that window that we were talking about last week, what was next after New Zealand. So we just keep building, and I think this is going to be another fantastic test, especially because we would think we're around their mark, but and Canada's rising. So and over there, I think, yeah, just super excited about this one. So well done for Football Australia organising that one.
On Canada's current form, last week they were knocked out by Guatemala on penalties in the CONCACAF Gold Cup. So that would have obviously been a very disappointing result for Canada. But look, as the host or one of the co-hosts of the next edition of the World Cup, they'll be certainly looking to progress as far as they can. And they're in the similar position to Australia now, with Australia having already qualified, that they're not really going to have many competitive fixtures, if any. So they're going to be really looking for some challenging opponents. So we've got a bit of history with Canada as well. Australia was Canada's first ever opponent when Australia won 3-2 on the 7th of June in 1924. Do you remember that game, mate?
Yeah, absolutely. I loved it. Sydney Football Stadium, yeah? Was
I
it
wasn't
Sydney?
around, mate, so I was just checking if
Oh,
you were around
I
for that
know.
one.
I remember very young
You
early
remember that
days.
one? No,
I'm
mate.
pretty sure it
That's
was at the Sydney Football Stadium.
might have been SCG, mate. I don't know if the Sydney Football Stadium would have even been built
Oh,
back then.
I'm gonna
Um,
have to check that. Can we notate that down? I want to find that out.
and of course, the more recent history as well is, what are we looking at? 31 years ago, Australia defeated Canada in a World Cup qualifier when a 20-year-old Mark Schwarzer on debut made two penalty saves against
Yes,
Canada.
loved it.
I remember those ones. I don't know if watched them live, but I certainly remember the highlights of Big Schwarzer coming up big in the shootout, something that he did many years later as well.
Started a superb career.
Yeah, absolutely. In the Socceroos kit and all throughout Europe as well. So looking a bit further forward, we've got New Zealand in the September window. We've got Canada and another North American opponent, more than likely, in the October window. But looking ahead to the November window, just thinking about who we're likely to be playing against. So I had a look at the confederations during the week. So CONMEBOL, obviously in South America, Brazil, Argentina, and Ecuador are already qualified. So there are some potential opponents. And by the time the November window comes around, Uruguay, Paraguay, or Colombia are likely to have qualified as well. So there's a South American angle we could look at. There's going to be 9 teams that will have qualified out of Africa as well. So we've obviously ticked off Asia through qualifying. We've ticked off North America. Europe's going to be right in the middle of their qualifying, so I don't anticipate any of those teams coming up. But do you have a preference of who you'd like to see the Socceroos play in that November window?
Yeah, definitely Africa. I think South America would be a bit too much for us at the moment. I want to see us build confidence, and I think Africa is probably around our level that we can compete against. I'd rather play South America leading into the World Cup. That's why I think Africa, different styles, I guess, with the travel and direction. But I think if they had something in London or something, that'd be suitable for, an African team to gather a team and the soccer team to gather around. We've played in London before,
Yeah, at
or
the Mighty
around the
Craven
UK.
Cottage, mate. Mighty
Maybe,
Craven
yeah.
Cottage.
Yeah. So I'd test Africa. Like with this bigger the amount of teams and the more groups you're going to get, I think we need to keep testing ourselves against different nations. We've played a few South American ones before, but yeah, no, my preference definitely Africa. Only because I want to build and I want to get that different styles of play. I want to test ourselves against that and then build on to South America because yeah, I'd just rather prep for them when we're closer to the World Cup.
Let's not get it wrong. There's going to be some quality teams coming out of Africa as well. So we'll be able to have a look at who we can line up there. And good point about playing in Europe, in London somewhere, because we've got plenty of our Socceroos based in Europe, and a lot of those African teams will have the same as well. So it might work out well for us to plan that kind of game.
I don't want to eat those top nations just yet. Well, wait till
But I
we
th-
wait
yeah,
till we build.
but I
That's a
think
good
look, you're
call.
right in terms of style though as well, because we could draw anyone in the World Cup. Yeah, we're going to draw someone from Europe more than likely. But then, yeah, we definitely could pull someone from South America, and we're gonna have to get used to how they play. And you hope it's not a Brazil or an Argentina, but it's a great challenge to have as well. But
Well,
yeah, I
that
think
goes.
Africa's a good call.
Yeah, look, that goes on your point that you raised a couple of weeks ago about being in
Yeah,
pot two,
yeah, agree. Yeah,
which is massive. So I think it's really this group. When it's drawn, it could open up for us quite nicely.
While we're talking Socceroos, former Socceroo James Jago called time on his career during the week as well. So he started in the A League with Melbourne Victory and Adelaide United before moving overseas, playing in Austria. He played for Austria Vienna for quite a while, which is obviously now the home of Noah Bodic. He also played in Greece, in Belgium and in Scotland for Hibernian, who obviously have plenty of Aussies over there as well. He returned back to Melbourne City playing 18 games, but really was crippled with injuries in his time at Melbourne City. But he was a 15-time Socceroo, had his matches in 2018 and 2019. He didn't go to that World Cup. I thought he did, but confirmed that today. But I thought he's a pretty solid competitor in that Socceroos midfield around that time. I would have thought he had a longer stretch and a few more games, but I'm surprised he only had that many. But it was probably a bit of a transition moment for the Socceroos, and I thought he was quite good in his time in the Socceroos jersey.
Yeah, real professional, and congratulations for his career, and well done to James Jago. We wish him all the best in the future. And look, I'm sure if his body would allowed him to go on, he would have. But look, still, if you're captain for the Socceroos, I'm sure that would have meant the world to him. So 15 caps, that's sensational. So well done, mate.
Yeah, 14 seasons all up in his club career. So decent innings for sure. Plenty of professionals don't get that many seasons at the top level. So yeah, well done to James, and yeah, all the best in your retirement. Speaking more about some national team news, Carl Viet has replaced Brad Maloney as the Joey's coach. There were a couple of quotes that I actually pulled out from the statement released for Football Australia that I thought were very interesting, and I'd love to get your thoughts on them, Opera, as well. So they said throughout his tenure at Adelaide United, Viet guided a young squad of locally developed players to 3 semi-final appearances, and during that time was credited with transitioning the likes of Nestor Irankunda, Mohamed Toure, Panagiotis Kikianis, Ethan Alagic, and Luka Ivanovic into professional football. Viet's appointment brings an exciting combination of senior coaching experience, youth national team exposure, a proven track record of youth development, and an intimate knowledge of the Australian football ecosystem. And the Subway Joey's next assembly will be during September, where Viet will select his first squad to travel to Japan to compete in the International Youth Soccer Tournament in Niigata. So, what do you make of Carl Viet's appointment and some of those quotes?
Really like the statement. I totally agree. The compelling knowledge of Australian football, etc. Absolute massive tick. If I look at where his managerial started, Calvert obviously started in the Adelaide coaching youth system for 5 years between 2008 2012. So, as you said, some of those names that you mentioned that played for Adelaide, I think obviously developing is one of his strengths. You can see that through his coaching and trusting in them. He's got obviously a challenge with the 17s because it's very difficult with the database of who's actually where. And I think we'll talk later about the emerging Matildas, emerging Socceroos competitions. That will be great benefit for him. But geez, it'd be a really difficult job to do, wouldn't it, to try to get who the best of the best is at that age, especially with our pyramid and our platform around how we're set up around Australian football. But I think Calvert in himself, like he's an international, 18 caps, 7 goals. You know, he's done everything. He's coached in the A League. He's coached at junior level, senior level. He's gonna give vast knowledge. And obviously, we've gone for someone who's very experienced. And I like that approach. I would have thought maybe they would have looked a bit younger, being those younger sides. But I think Calvert's experience, if he's available, will be a very valuable asset to the whole setup, not just for the juniors, but for the next progression. And there's some exciting talent coming through, and it'll be the biggest challenge for me, obviously, for Calvert is how do you get that database and scout network, not only for young Australians here, but ones that are already challenging themselves overseas in the youth systems, and those who are challenging themselves. How do you get that database together so he can get the best team of under 17s performing and get that squad really, really going? That had a bit of a disappointment last result there, as we talked about in the last few episodes. So hopefully they can bounce back, and Calvert will bring some invaluable experience. So congratulations to Carl. I think it's a great appointment, and we wish him all the best, and we'll be supporting the under 17s as they go through that journey.
I think he's a fantastic appointment, and I agree with you in terms of his knowledge of the Australian football system, but also his ability to transition those youngsters through as well. And we've seen in those underage teams just how many of them are from Adelaide United. And I think outside of those names mentioned, there's plenty more where if he hasn't had direct dealings with him, he's instilled programs into Adelaide United. He's been part of the setup with Football South Australia to be able to develop those pathways for those youngsters to come through. So I think a great appointment. I'm glad they've gone for a bit of experience because you're right, it is a really crucial time for these underage teams. They need to keep qualifying for these tournaments. We need to keep producing our future Socceroos throughout these groups, and I think Carl's ability to be able to do that is going to be just absolutely invaluable for this group to be coming through. So
Yeah, we wish him well, and yeah, go down to 17s. It's the starting point. I really want to see Carl take the 17s and test themselves and develop and get the Football Australia to really take them abroad and play clubs, play countries a lot more. We really need football at this level. I reckon it's the stepping stone to our future growth. And if we've got to get this part right, and I'm very passionate about it, we've just got to challenge ourselves better in this space. And hopefully he can not just produce but push that Football Australia envelope to get more competitive football games across all broad nations. And we can't just rely on World Cups or or Asia Cups to go and play games. I want more competitive games at this level. I've seen it with England, how many caps they get at that 17 level, and I want more, and I demand more from Football Australia to get that, to support Carl, because it's been a bit of a gap that's been lagging for some time in that space.
I think as you mentioned as well though, the challenge is for him. And we've seen even with the upcoming Under-20 World Cup that it's not an official FIFA window, so clubs do not have to release players. So you can imagine if they've got one of the best 16, 17-year-olds on their books and they don't have to let them go, that's a struggle and that's a challenge that Viet's gonna have to overcome. But I certainly agree with you in terms of the more football we can get, the more connections between these levels. And, we do hear these stories from time to time for players that have get to that national level, that full international level, and they've played together throughout their whole career, or at least kind of intersected at times. So those combinations, I think, once we kind of bring them through, are really important. All right, let's move on to the Matildas, who continue their work under Joe Montemurro. We did speak about the first game against Slovenia last time. Since then, they've had a 1-1 draw with Slovenia. Michelle Heyman popping up with the goal. Beautiful setup from the Matildas. Lovely clip ball in from Ellie Carpenter. And nice little run there from Michelle Heyman to find the space. But Slovenia did pull a goal back late. And look, over the two games, Slovenia probably did deserve a goal. And yeah, credit to them and how they performed over those two legs. The first game against Panama was also played on Saturday in Bunbury. Geez, it was wet and windy, and it certainly looked cold over there. And it was a bit of a mixed lineup for the Matildas. Obviously, these games have been broken up with some of the players heading back to their clubs, but it was Tegan Micah in goals, and then Torpy, Pryor, Nevin, and Rankin across the back line. The midfield three was Berry Hill, Chidiac, and Alana Murphy, and then Emily Gilnick, Holly McNamara, and Hayley Razzo up front. So it certainly wasn't an inexperienced team, but Panama came to play and certainly gave the Matildas a game.
Yeah, congratulations to Slovenia for giving us two really good quality games to test ourselves against. And you're right about Panama, the most recent game. They brought their physical presence and they brought their press, and they really imposed themselves on us. And I think we got a bit rattled there, obviously, when on the ball. But Panama, you know, deserved a result, and that they didn't play the best of football, but they played football smart and they played physical, and they definitely imposed themselves. So I think if you don't mind me just chatting in, I'm glad I listened to Joe's press conference after the game, because I think we all want great results. And I think a lot of Matildas would have been frustrated, and so would a few of the fans because, no one likes losing. But it's the journey that they're on too. And I really think he articulated and emphasised that. Probably brought my emotions down a bit just to bring it all back in. And he reported after the game that it was a bitsy game, had no rhythm, but understands with this camp of this nature there was going to be challenges and especially with the continuity on the pitch, which we've seen, three different lineups, and I'm sure we're going to get a fourth different lineup, but all for the right reasons and all for future benefit. And when we look at this result, we're going to probably not even remember it or think about it because the real result's going to be in that Asia Cup and moving towards those qualifications. That they're the real tests.
I
So
agree with I agree with you on that point. I mean, a 1-0 win to Panama versus a 1-0 win to the Matildas, does that make any difference at all? Like it probably doesn't. But do you think Joe's happy with what he's seen so far?
You know what? That's a damn good question, and I would think he'd be slightly concerned, and only because I think technically, I'm a little bit concerned about them technically, and I reckon this is when we brought in the youth. I the technical level's just not as high as what I was probably expecting, and that's again I see the gaps with that where the Matildas are and young Matildas and 17s that we've got a bit of work to do in that space, and
Is that
also
around the point of being possession based and wanting to play out from the back, do you mean?
yeah, well, definitely because you look at the elite, they don't give up the ball. Yeah, and that's the challenge. But Joe did state in the first press conferences that he wants to see his players under pressure. And I am glad when we look at that lineup that Murphy, 19, gonna be a star, that is being tested in this environment against all different nations, against physical, against speed. And, she's got to learn. And I reckon probably Cooney Cross is probably the best example I look at from that second game about the elite. So I think even though Cooney
Mate,
Cross
that
give
can I just say on Cooney Cross, that turn that she did out of danger
yeah,
and then burst forward, that's world class. That's world class for me. Just like yeah,
yeah. Well, that's what I want to touch on because like she's not regularly starting. She's getting some game time, but that development from Arsenal and the elite players that she's playing against and the growth that she got, and she was Melbourne Victory as well. I can see Murphy going down that same path. And that's Murphy's test, not to get her head down. She's got a lot of talent and she probably gave away the ball, but she needs to go away. And so do the other young ones that have been immersed in this camp and go, righto, then I've got to get that touch right. I've got to get that elite. So I can't give the ball away. And I reckon that's what they'd probably be frustrated because they're trying to impress, yeah. But I think technically we just need to try to go, okay, where's the best club I need to play at? Where's the standard I need to play at? This is it now. So I've got to get to that next level if I want to be in these further camps because I think Joe would have gone, okay, we've got some deficiencies when playing out of the back. So can we transition the ball with this group? And that's what he said. I want to see him tested whether they can do it. And they can. Look, I'm not saying that they can't do it. They definitely did in periods and spots, but we turned the ball over too much against Slovenia and Panama, and gave them way too many opportunities. And I like the fact when I want to touch on him with his press conference, he did say he demands the high rhythm, and he spent most of this training camp playing out from the back. He said he hasn't even really worked on the midfield forward connection. He's been focused on back to the
interesting.
midfield. Yeah.
Interesting.
Which is why I said the press conference was so vital. I'm glad I listened to it. And I actually played it back a couple of times just to get his thought, get his understanding, because he's looking for that high rhythm. Now he's going to demand this. And this is why the difference with the elite coach, yeah, he's going to demand it, and he's going to expect those players to either get up to that speed and come along for the ride, or go back to your club and get up to that speed because that's what I'm looking for, and that's the standard. So yeah, he would have been probably disappointed, but I thought he'd still probably understand that they're on that journey and the expectation is not going to be there. And he has mixed the lineup. So like I said, when Cooney Cross come in, she provided that. That's why I reckon Murphy and all that would be looking at that and going, yeah, I've got to, if I can get to that standard, I think it's going to be a big bonus. But again, he wants elite football, and I like it. I was a bit worried against Panama. I counted we went back 14 times to the goalkeeper, 14 times in one half, and I was just going, what are we doing? We're closing down our space again. We're doing it to ourselves, and then that first ball, I think that's would be his biggest concern. The first ball, we're always under pressure, so that either that touch isn't right or that ball's not right, and that ball's putting them under pressure. So I think that's what Joe really needs to get the message in this camp. That's the elite level that he needs to try to improve, because that's what he's going to demand in the future. I
Is that the
do.
when you say, like, going back though, is that just part of his possession-based football though? Like, if the player's looking forward and there isn't an option, the option is to retain the ball rather than play that longer ball. Is that what he's looking for?
Yeah, well, he did say it was probably his own fault that they played that way because he put so much focus on it. He
Mm.
said he probably will little obviously his own words, he's shown with a little negativity going back. So obviously they're thinking what he wants. So he's thinking, yeah, obviously I want that possession base, and they're thinking, well, I've got to try to produce that. And by going back rather than doing maybe a natural turn or a first time ball, that's he's probably brought that on. He admitted that, and he said that little negativity going back is probably based on the camp that he's had. But I think that's the positive out of it, and that's why we don't look at these results as a result, because I think, like you said before, the future is in this blueprint, and he's got to coach that blueprint for whoever comes in, because we've got a lot of people out injured, and we've given some absence, well needed absence for the others, and you can see that next level down. He's got to try to get back up. So, I think I just want to touch on those few comments because I thought it was a very good press conference in the journey, and he's very composed. He knows exactly where we are. So would he be disappointed? I think this is part of it for him. So he wants to see it for himself, like who's got what.
And do you think that this is he's testing our depth? Because in my mind, I think we can probably write 9 of the starting 11 in permanent marker on the team sheet for the Asian Cup, and that won't change. So
Definitely
there's
not. No.
probably
Yeah,
2, maximum 3 spots up for grabs. So these mix of younger players and then bringing some more experienced players back, he's looking to fill those last couple of spots, and then he's looking to build his squad and his bench from that
yeah.
point.
Second 11, I think he's looking at who, if someone's out like Mary Fowler, who's going to take it. Sam Kerr's the same. You know, if someone needs a break, who's going to play that role? I think he's just gone. I think we've been settled in our first 11, apart from a couple of positions, for a long time. So it's just a matter of who's going to bring that next player on, and that's why I think, the Murphys and that of the footballing space are going to really enjoy these moments, because I think they're going to get a lot out of it, and that's credit to Joe putting these players in this squad and testing them out. And if we didn't do it, then you'll never know, and they don't get the experience. So I think it's a smart camp what he's done. Every game's going to matter in this process, and he's looking just to continue to test and build talent. Yeah, and they he wants them under pressure, and I think he's got that, because if they don't improve under pressure, then they don't become elite footballers.
Who impressed you in that game against Panama? For me, I quite like seeing Jamila Rankin out on that left. I thought she was quite good. I didn't mind seeing Courtney Nevin in that left centre back spot as well. So they were probably the 2 that I looked at and thought were pretty good. I didn't think the midfield worked all that well, and then probably the forward line was a bit clunky, unfortunately, for me.
Yeah, I think Gillianak out on the right just doesn't work. We're trying to play like wide balls out to us, not her role. And Russo was coming in and then around, and I know he said in his other press conference that modern day football we're going to be in every space, but I really think Em just needs to be in that middle if we're going to utilise her, so Russo and McNamara can find the space, because that's their job. But again, he hasn't worked on the midfield to attack.
Yeah.
So he's just trying different things. I think it's, the experience and the youth in there with a bit of with A-grade quality. I think they just haven't played enough football together, and you can see that in their connections. But I do want to shout out to the four Matildas that debuted, Chief. Some very exciting talent coming through. We've got Jacinta. Uh, can you
Just
pronounce it?
Jacinta Galabadaci, I think it is.
You're a legend.
Someone else might smash you and say that's wrong, but I think that's how I read that one.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about Jacinta. 24, age 24, she's a striker currently playing with Sporting in Portugal. She has had 23 games over the last two seasons. And obviously started she prior to that she started at Melbourne City. Was at Celtic, 25 games for 15 goals. So she had a really good time at Celtic before moving over to Sporting. Yeah, as I said, originally from Melbourne City. She was once capped at under 20, so well done on her first cap. Alex Apocalypse. She was in age 19, called into young Matildas camp before being elevated in the Matildas to play. So that was a fantastic elevation. She plays for Melbourne City, and prior to that, the Western Sydney Wanderers. And she's been capped under 20s 8 times. Now, she was a full-time Future Matildas scholarship. So what that is, a full-time Future Matildas scholarship offers full-time high performance to accelerate development. So I just wanted to point that out, and she's making big waves for Melbourne City. She's got a big future. So great to obviously get her cap. This is a really good story. Yeah, Adrian Taranto, age 26, midfielder currently playing with Western United, 39 matches, 6 goals, previously with the Victory. She did represent Australia at the under-17 level, and she just renewed her one-year contract with Western United. Her general manager actually spoke very highly of her and stated that she's been the backbone of their club and their program. So well done to Adriana at 26 getting the first cap. And then,
Just on Toronto too, before you move on to the next one, I saw today she only returned from her ACL injury in January this year.
wow,
Got her first call up, obviously, not long ago, and yeah, to make her Matilda's debut. So, what a return from injury. So, yeah, credit to Adriana Taranto for that.
excellent. And also I want to touch on Brisbane Roar's young star, Grace Coolmer, 18 years of old, plays for Brisbane Roar. 20 times she's been played for the Roar, 6 goals. Was great to see. She got a few minutes in the back end of the game, but one for the future. She recently captained the young Matildas with Indiana Dos Santos, who's currently out injured, in the Pacific Sports 4 tournament that they won. So very excited, and very exciting post after the game, how happy they were to obviously get their first Matilda cap. So well done on those girls. And look, that's a fantastic effort for all four of them. So well done to all those four girls and the team for their performance against Panama. Not the result, but I think they'll take a lot out of it.
I think, look, as I touched on, I would say that there is a bit of optimism and a bit of concern from Joe Montemurro, but certainly one thing is for sure, he's going to learn a lot from this camp. And look, after the Panama game on Tuesday, which is the last of this series of game, and the Matilda's next competition is the 8-team 2025 ASEAN Women's Championship, which is in August. I look at that and think they should probably be aiming to win it. It's going to be made up of mainly locally based players, you'd think, given that the other competitions around the world are going to be back in full flight. But the Matildas are in Group B with the Philippines, Myanmar, Timor-Leste, and then Group A contains Indonesia, Cambodia, Thailand, and Vietnam. So I think it'd be interesting to see how Joe approaches this tournament. I did see a comment earlier today that we tend to send under 23s or under 20s to this tournament, but I wonder if that's something that he'll look to try and win, get a bit of silverware, or just kind of keep building some momentum, keep trying things in preparation.
Well, don't forget, Chief, I think the young Matildas under 20 in August have got the upcoming qualifiers. So we won't be taking, I
That's
wouldn't
true.
think, anyone
That's
from
true.
under 20s. They'll be at Tajikistan with 3 games in 5 days, but probably in preparation before that. So, yeah, I think that one's going to be a bit of a date clash there. But obviously, like you
There's
said,
no reason though that with the A League Women's being out of season that you couldn't pull. a really decent side. I think your locally based players and be very competitive to go very far in that tournament.
Well, Chief, is this the question? Is this what this camp is for?
Potentially, I mean, look, again, it's one of those things that if they win it, it'd be a nice moment to have. And looking at the competition, they're not going to be the most competitive teams in Asia. With all respect to those teams, but it could be just another one where we kind of build some momentum. Maybe the trophy is a bit of momentum, a bit of optimism around the camp, and as we kind of continue to build to the Asian Cup next year.
I think it's good timing. Like as I said, if we're looking, like you said, for the other players to step up, because again, this is another good few succession of games that he's going to have an opportunity to see before the big one next year. Because it's coming up quick. It's not too far away in March.
Yeah, agree with that. While we're talking Tillies, there's been a bit of transfer news. Well, the first one's not transfer news, but Holly McNamara has extended her deal with Melbourne City for an extra year. Obviously, well documented. Holly coming back from all those tragic ACL injuries, so good to see that extension with City. And look, I think if she has another great season with Melbourne City. It won't be too long till she's getting an overseas move. And the other one was Emily Gilnick. She's moving from Melbourne Victory to CF Monterrey in Mexico. So, yeah, interesting move for Gilnick to move out of Melbourne Victory and challenge herself abroad. But the big news is Ellie Carpenter moving from Lyon to Chelsea. So after playing 126 games for Lyon, Carpenter's 25. Unbelievable how long she's been around and she's still only 25. She debuted for the Matildas at 15 and made her club debut at 15 as well. She's played 87 games for the Matildas. She's a two-time UEFA Women's Champions League winner. She won 7 domestic trophies in France. She's a premier and a champion in the A-League Women's with Melbourne City. What's missing, mate? What do you think's missing from her trophy cabinet?
Well, obviously Chelsea have stated very highly, and nearly every year they've stated this that they want the Champions League, and unfortunately I think that they got knocked out in the semi-finals. I think this year was that right? I think,
I think you might be
but
right, yeah.
yeah, but I'll tell you what, she's got a challenge on her plate. If I look at, but I do like Chelsea's system. I think that perfectly suits Carpenter. Yeah, like a wing. So they play wing backs. They play a 3-1-4-2. Sorry, which I think Ellie Carpenter would be is perfect role. I think she's
So
a
she'll
wing
be
back.
the wide player in that 4?
Yes, but this is a challenge. Right, currently there right now is the current England international 33-year-old Lucy Bronze, 135 caps international for England, has just re-signed a contract last year to 2026 and was regarded once as one of the best players in the world. So is this the transition I think
Yeah, that's a
Chelsea's thinking
succession
about?
plan for sure. That's
Yeah.
yeah, like Lucy Bronze, amazing player, but yeah, that they obviously had an opportunity to pick up Carpenter and they've gone for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Big signing, and I'll tell you what, another Chelsea statement. They're going to be, again, very hard to beat in that Premier League, and they're building towards that all elusive Champions League, but they keep finding a little bit too hard at the end. But look, again, an Australian playing at that club, unbelievable. Champions League, Premier League, fantastic.
Oh, what I was asking was what's missing from Ellie Carpenter's trophy cabinet.
Oh,
She's obviously
sorry.
won plenty for her clubs everywhere she's gone. I think the big one missing is a big trophy for the Matildas.
Well, she'll deliver that for you, mate, in March. Don't you worry about that. We'll be there supporting. I'm very confident. I've built
Thank
this
you,
team
Ellie.
up.
I appreciate it.
All
But
right.
just on a more serious note, she's a future captain in waiting, right? Like I know she's had the armband, I think once for the Matildas while Steph Catley's out, but just the passion that she has for that Matildas jersey, and I think that not to discredit her knowledge of the game and her tactical mind, but it's I see her as one of those do as I do captains. Like you're going to watch me put in the absolute maximum effort and I want you to get on my back and let's go for this one. She just the passion that she has for that Matildas jersey, I just think that's just so good. And look, as I said, at 25, She's got so much football in front of her, and look what she's already achieved in her career. I can't wait to see her kick on and see what else is in front of her.
Superstar. You've said it. Absolute superstar. And you're right, is a leader of that group, and she'll definitely be considered for, no doubt, whether they one captain, co-captain, or a leadership group. She's probably already one of the leaders in the group. So well said. Like you said, she's an A-lister, elite talent. We wish her well in the Chelsea move, and I think we're going to see bigger and better things. And hopefully, she's firing on all cylinders and for the Asia Cup coming up next year.
And look, yeah, potentially another 10 years in front of her. And I feel like she hasn't missed a beat since she's come back from her ACL injury. We often see players come back from ACLs and they're slower and they're not the players that they used to be. I don't see any of that with Ellie. I think, yeah, she's taken her game to another level. And yeah, I think great pickup for Chelsea and looking forward to seeing her play in that competition. I suppose just a final point on her move is that when she was in France with Lyon, they kind of dominated the league and it wasn't that competitive week in, week out. Whereas the WSL in England, it's going to be competitive. So I think that's going to be a different challenge for Ellie.
Yeah, definitely. But one needed to, you know, that's where we need our players to play at the best of league competitions. So I think, yeah, you've already seen that league build over time. It's only getting better.
Definitely, mate. Let's talk a few more transfers. So Franco Lino has come back to Melbourne Victory on a 12-month loan from Viking. So he's a replacement for Casey Boss at left back. He only played twice for the first team over at Viking and 11 times for the second team. So he's in contention for that under 20 World Cup as well. So I assume that part of his thinking was to come back and get some game time before that under 20 World Cup. But I think that's a good pickup for Victory and obviously a great replacement for Casey Boss.
Yeah, definitely, mate. It needs to play. It's as simple as that. If you're only playing that many times, yep, get back and start playing football. Plenty of
And
time for him.
there's a couple of other A-League transfers as well. So Michael Roos has gone from Western United up to Brisbane Roar. Limited game time for Roos behind Bodic in Western United. So, yeah, we'll certainly be looking to get some more game time up there at Brisbane. Max Burgess to Newcastle Jets. That one's been rumoured for quite a while, but it would just be great to see Burgess actually get on the pitch again. He's frozen out at Sydney FC, so looking forward to seeing him. Alu Kuol going to the Wanderers. That's an interesting pickup from the Wanderers. Obviously, they lost Zach Sapsford in the off season as well. So yeah, Kuol can perform on his day, but had a pretty disappointing season for the Mariners, it must be said. But reuniting with Alan Stajic at the Wanderers, and he's going to have some pressure on him to perform. So, yeah, it'd be very interesting to see how he gets on there. And Marin Yaklish has left the MacArthur Bulls, yet to see where he's going to land. So, a bit of A-League activity. And there's also a rumour that Dean Bazanis is going to come back to Brisbane Roar, who just let Matt Acton go during the week. So, yeah, we'll see if that one comes about. Bazanis has been playing his trade over in England for quite some time now. I just want to touch on a few on-field things as well. So, Thomas Deng, yesterday was the player of the match in Yokohama F. Marinos' huge 1-0 win over their rivals, Yokohama FC. Both clubs battling relegation, obviously well documented. Yokohama F. Marinos, of course, lost their manager, Patrick Kisnorbo, a couple of weeks back. So, yeah, good to see Tommy Deng putting in a good performance. He's been kind of left out of Tony Popovic's Socceroos squad. So, but yeah, well done to Thomas on that player of the match performance. Martin Boyle scored in Hibs' 6-3 friendly loss to Ajax. Hard to read into too much of it being a friendly, but yeah, Martin Boyle keeping up his goal scoring form. And there's a bit happening in the MLS as well. So Patrick Yazbek's Nashville had a 1-0 win this morning over top of the table Philadelphia. So now they're up to second in the Eastern Conference. It was a 11th minute stoppage time penalty. Yeah, heartbreak for Philadelphia. But yeah, there's the fair few games still to play in the Eastern Conference. But yeah, good win for Nashville, and they're on a bit of a run at the moment, which is good for Patrick Yazbek. clean sheet for Kai Rolls at DC United. They're struggling in the league, but 0-0 draw with Atlanta United, who are also struggling a bit as well. And REFPL came on in stoppage time, and Lachlan Brooker was an unused sub for Real Salt Lake, who beat St. Louis City 3-2 on the other side of the pitch. Jake Gerberdreich played a full game at centre back. So a few of our Aussies getting a bit of game time and performing pretty well over in the MLS, which is, while we're off in the A-League and we're off in all the European competitions, the Asian competitions and the MLS continue on. So good to have some on-field football happening.
I can't believe the Marinos, Chief. They're 5 points still. Oh, and they're still last, 5 points away from relegation. That'd be a
Shocking
huge
start.
story.
Shocking start.
Yeah, I know they've had a draw and a win their last couple of games, but geez, I think from Australian perspective, we've got a small little soft spot for them. So we'll keep an eye on that, and hopefully Dan can get them over the line over there.
Yeah, definitely, mate. And as I said, with the legacy that Postecoglou and Muscat had with them, we do have a bit of that soft spot for Marinos, and we hope that they do well. So, lastly, we just wanted to touch on the emerging Socceroos and Matildas Championship. So the emerging Socceroos Championship started today. I've seen a few highlights for a few of the goals, a few cracking goals. So hopefully that turns into plenty of talent coming through our ranks. And you mentioned Calvia earlier. I'm sure it's a competition that he's going to have a keen eye on to see the next generation of talent coming through. So this is able to be watched on community TV. If you do know any players playing in this tournament, or you just have a bit of an interest in it. So check out community TV to see if you're able to watch any games. There's a full schedule out there. But they're popping some highlights up on the social media feed. So it's been very interesting viewing. So it started today and it runs for pretty much the rest of the week. So exciting times to see the next generation of talent coming through.
Just want to wrap up too, Chief, if you don't mind. Matilda's under-20s camp wrapped up on Wednesday. So obviously their next tournament is in August. So they've got a little bit of space in the next month. And obviously Wrexham has landed, got Melbourne Victory on the 11th of July on Friday. And then obviously they're off to Sydney on the 15th of July for Australian football fans if they want to get out there. It's awesome stuff, mate. Obviously another busy week ahead, and fantastic to see obviously a few Matildas get young debuts, and obviously we'll look forward to what football world presents with us this week.
Mate, no doubt there'll be plenty happening in the next 7 days, and we'll be here to cover it this time next week. But for the time being, thank you everyone for listening. We really appreciate your support. Jump onto socials, give us a follow. We try to get as much content out there during the week as possible. Send in your thoughts, send in your questions. We did have a couple actually this week that we're not going to have time to get to, but we'll save them for the following week because they're not exactly time conscious. We can do it another time, but we do appreciate everyone's feedback and commentary.
Well, thanks everyone. I appreciate your support, and have a great week, and we look forward to hearing and seeing from you all in the following week.
All right, thanks everyone for listening to the Aussie Game Podcast. We'll see you next time.